Security concerns remain in the headlines amid plans for yet another attempt at launching a spy satellite into space by North Korea this month. So how would a successful launch this time around affect regional geopolitical tensions? What response measures are likely to be adopted by neighbours including South Korea? And does Russia's collaboration with North Korea look to affect its ties with South Korea? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. It's Wednesday, and today I have our panel of foreign correspondents to touch upon events here on the peninsula over the past few days. For more on this, I have Nicola Smith from the Telegraph with me in the studio. Nicola, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
I also have Michelle Ye Hee Lee for the Washington Post with us. Michelle, this is probably the first time we're actually meeting in person.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the studio. Nicola, let's begin then with security concerns on the Korean Peninsula. Now, pundits believe that North Korea is planning a third satellite launch this month. Tell us more about this belief and its broader implications, if I may.
Okay, well, first of all, yesterday, North Korean state media seemed to indicate that something might be on the cards. It said that a military spy satellite was indispensable to North Korean national security. And that appears to back up what analysts in South Korea have been saying. Last week, you had the Korean Institute for National Unification, who predicted that North Korea might try a third launch of a military reconnaissance satellite between Tuesday, yesterday, and October 26th. And they based that calculation partly on significant things that were happening during that time period. First of all, yesterday you had the 78th founding anniversary of the ruling Workers' Party in North Korea. And also you have a big significant Belt and Road Forum that's coming up where in China, where Xi Jinping may meet Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. And so the South Korean Institute said that also that North Korea could be rushing to beat South Korea, which also plans to launch its own first military surveillance satellite. And so there would be a symbolic purpose there as well. Pyongyang has constantly had as one of its long-stated defense goals this idea of launching a military satellite. And so this isn't new, but the implications are also quite clear. There have been two failed launches. Previously, when they attempted to make those launches, analysts and also government officials were saying that they were warning that this could give North Korea the capability to play a more crucial role in the event of a nuclear preemptive strike, that it would enable it to strike targets more accurately, and also it would be in breach of UN Security Council resolutions.
Right, and staying with North Korea's spy satellite plan, Michelle, how would a successful launch perhaps affect regional geopolitical tensions, do you think?
Right. As Nicola mentioned, I think it's not a surprise that this satellite test is upcoming. They've already tried twice and have identified October as a potential date. And we know that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is in the midst of a 5-year military plan to expand and diversify his nuclear arsenal. So I think the fact that it's happening, a successful launch, would not be a surprise strategically or technically, but I do think it'll bring a couple dynamics into play and more attention. First of all, we know that the North Korean satellite program, the space program, and the ICBM program, ballistic program, are closely linked because of the technology that it takes to advance both types of weapons. So I think, once you see a successful satellite test, the question will be, how will this help advance its ICBM capabilities, which is, of course, a big concern to the U.S. The U.S. Department of Defense has already expressed concerns about the previous two satellite launches, the tests, and what North Korea may have learned about its own capabilities through those failures, and what it would be able to learn in trying to conduct a full-range ICBM launch that has the potential to reach the entire continental United States. And second, as mentioned, it would be a violation of UN security sanctions to conduct this satellite launch. And the fact that it would be with the help of Russia potentially, the fact that China hasn't said anything about it, or that the two countries haven't done anything about it to try to rein in Kim Jong-un, even though they are permanent members of the Security Council, I think really points to how difficult the situation is in getting any sort of action out of the Security Council at all in response to the North Korean weapons development. And lastly, I think we could expect US, South Korea, and Japan to react, to try to probably get closer even more, as we've seen through the Camp David summit, through their resolve to respond to North Korea as a grouping. And I think we're going to see some sort of reaction from them coming out of a successful North Korean satellite test.
Right, and speaking about a reaction, Nicola, what response measures do you envision from neighbors, including South Korea, Japan, and of course the US, in the event of a successful mission by North Korea this time around?
Well, Japan has previously threatened to shoot down a satellite or debris that may pass over its airspace and its territory, but that didn't happen before. If there is a successful launch, all three nations, they have previously promised a resolute response, but they're really quite limited in what they can actually do. As Michelle said, there's a problem at the UN Security Council. Russia and China are blocking further sanctions against North Korea. So it'd be difficult to take action against Russia or North Korea at the UN Security Council. What we have seen during the previous launch in August, or attempted launch, was that there was a reaction to sanction individuals in Russia and also companies. So you could see more of the same, where individuals rather than states are targeted, which may make some difference. But I would agree with Michelle that what we're likely to see is more cooperation between the three countries, more joint military drills, also more military intelligence sharing. At Camp David, there was talk of introducing an early warning system that they could coordinate better, and they may take the decision to accelerate that. And none of this is in North Korea's interests, or it will not react kindly to that, but it clearly sees it to be much more of a strategic advantage to launch this satellite.
Right. Michelle, some claim that this planned satellite launch may be more of a political message to the people of North Korea rather than an act of provocation. Speaking within your capacity as a journalist who has been covering regional security tensions, how do you respond?
I think that's a really great question. And with North Korea, you never exactly know what they're thinking, what's going on. They could issue statements in state media, but it's always going to be propaganda, so you can't take it at face value. With all these military, the weapons tests, the parades, the drills, what I've learned in the past few years, speaking with experts who know North Korea very deeply, is that these tests could serve many different purposes. One test, one message could serve different audiences, could be seen in different ways depending on who's reading what about that message. So I think there is a case to be made about the domestic message that North Korea wants to send. It could serve that audience. We know that Kim Jong-un really is dealing with a difficult economic situation on the inside. He's constantly trying to he's acknowledging the insecurity that they have with their food supply and the economics within, but he's trying to also instill some confidence in his people. So it could serve that domestic purpose. It could, especially if, because he tends to have these tests around major North Korean holidays, it could serve that propaganda push. It could also serve the technical function of developing his space program, which Kim Jong-un has been prioritizing, and we know that he wants to develop. The failed tests specifically serve a function for the researchers and the people trying to work on the program. They learn a lot through those tests that they failed, how to improve their functionality, how to improve their capability. And I think it could also serve the purpose of an international message, a global message of provocation, of strength, of trying to get the attention of different countries that may be focusing on different parts of the world right now. So I do think that missile tests, weapons tests can serve multiple functions, and it could be very multifaceted.
Right, of course. Moving forward, Nicola, do tell us a bit about the alarming surge, I believe, in the level of rail traffic going from North Korea to Russia. What are the broader implications of this reality?
Well, first of all, just to recap, the satellite photos taken over the past couple of weeks have shown a dramatic and unprecedented level of freight rail car traffic along the border between North Korea and Russia. And so this imagery was obtained and analysed by Beyond Parallel, which is a project run by the Washington-based Centre for Strategic and International Studies. And they looked at these images which were taken at the Tumangang rail station just on the border and saw roughly 73 carriages, which is plus shipping containers covered in tarpaulin. And so this looks highly suspicious. Lots of people have been asking whether this could be related to shipments that US officials have long been warning are taking place of artillery, North Korean artillery to Russia, which it needs for the Ukraine war. It's running low on stocks, and US officials in particular have been stressing that there has been some kind of deal between Russia and North Korea for Pyongyang to give its artillery to Russia, and for Russia then in exchange to give some kind of food and medical aid, but also advanced technology that could be used, say, in satellite launches or technology or in submarines. Now, North Korea and Pyongyang are both denying this. But these pictures were taken just a few days after Kim Jong-un had gone to Russia for a very long visit, where he saw military equipment, he visited military factories, he had the red carpet rolled out for him by Vladimir Putin. And we didn't get a readout about what they discussed, but it is believed by analysts and by the US and its allies that a deal could have been made there. And so these freight cars that we've seen, they don't give us conclusive evidence of anything, but it's very hard to see what's in them, but it does point in that direction.
Right, and keeping that in mind, Michelle, how does such collaboration between North Korea and Russia look to affect perhaps their standoff with the broader international community?
I think the two leaders are really digging their heels in their standoff with the international community. The meeting between the two leaders, even the image itself, I think was really a show of defiance toward the international isolation of both leaders, toward the sanctions levied on both countries. And it really showed how much of a pariah both leaders have become on the international stage, and how they're willing to stick together to show that they're not backing down, they're not going to compromise, and in fact, they're just going to stick closer than ever. And we know that North Korea and Russia have always had a complicated relationship. It's not been a values-driven alliance of shared values, but it's been more of a relationship of convenience. They go toward each other when they need something from each other, and it's clear that at the moment they feel they do need something from each other. As Nicola said, we don't know exactly what happened at the meeting. We don't know what they agreed upon, aside from the little bit that they told us publicly. But we do know that they both have short-term and long-term interests in each other at the moment. Putin, needs munitions that North Korea could provide. Kim is looking for some sort of economic support, economic lifeline, maybe some sort of technical assistance for his missile program. There are shared interests right now that they could get from each other. And even if it's not just those tangible gains, I think even the political message, the visible message that they're sending, that they're in it together, that they're in the same corner, is something that they probably wanted to send. And I think that actually even makes the international standoff even more acute.
Right, and borrowing Michelle's words, Nicola, how does this relationship of convenience between North Korea and Russia look to affect perhaps Moscow's own relationship with Seoul?
Well, it certainly looks as if Russia can no longer be seen as a reliable or constructive partner when it comes to dealing with North Korea and curbing its nuclear ambitions. And it has historically played a more constructive role in that relationship. And I think what it shows now is that President Putin is much more willing to court Kim Jong-un as a future strategic partner, that he sees that in his immediate interests more than, in terms of countering US interests, also to the detriment of South Korea, and that he sees that as more advantageous at the moment. And for years it was an accepted belief that Seoul didn't want to antagonize Moscow. It wanted to keep it on side so that it would be more helpful in curtailing North Korea. And Moscow did play an important role. It did support, previously it supported UN Security Council sanctions resolutions. It also played, 20 years ago, it played a constructive role in the six-party talks. It sat around the table with everyone trying to find a solution. And it seems that President Putin has now departed from that position. Now Seoul's facing a new reality with Moscow and is, I guess, feeling its way as to how to deal with that. President Putin sees it to be more advantageous to use North Korea to kind of solidify his stance against the international community more widely, as Michelle said. And for South Korea, there's also been a shift. We've seen a lot more support for Ukraine, very overt support in terms of humanitarian aid, promises for reconstruction. President Yoon went personally to Ukraine. And so there's been a much more bolder sense of support for Ukraine. It hasn't gone as far as supplying arms directly, but it has played a role in being a backfill for the countries that have been supplying Ukraine.
All right, and staying or expanding on what Nicola has just said, Michelle, do you suppose that collaboration between North Korea and Russia may perhaps offer South Korea a pretext of sorts to expand its support plan for Ukraine to include weapons?
I think it certainly highlights the role that South Korea could play even more to directly support Ukraine with lethal weapons, directly rather than backfilling the U.S. or Poland and other countries. And there's the question that Nicola raised, which is, the role between Korea and Russia and South Korea and Russia and how that might be changing now. And from the U.S. perspective, certainly they want to see South Korea sort of move closer to doing those direct weapon shipments, because certainly from the U.S. standpoint, it seems like North Korea and Russia are already squarely on each other's side. And what else is South Korea really concerned about in terms of, driving those two countries together when they're having this side-by-side summit now? And that, U.S. officials are really hoping to see South Korea step up in terms of these direct shipments to Ukraine. But I also know that from South Korea's perspective, the business community has really big concerns about what the potential implications might be. Many of the big conglomerates, the South Korean conglomerates, have presences in Russia. Some of the biggest companies like LG, Samsung, Hyundai, they all have business interests, and they have already expressed some concerns about South Korea really crossing that line to providing that sort of direct support. So I suppose that even if there is a pretext, there has to be some workarounds made with the business community, some tough conversations maybe. But I do think it does put a spotlight on the role that South Korea could be playing if it does choose to decide to use its vast weaponry, the munitions that it's sitting on, to directly support Ukraine.
Right, indeed. I believe we have time for a question or two on some light issues now. Nicola, I understand that Busan there's been actually quite a bit of coverage about Busan upping its efforts to bring home the 2030 World Expo. The actual bid itself, the final vote, is on November 28th. And ahead of that vote, what more can you tell us about Busan's efforts to bid to host the 2030 World Expo?
Well, it seems that there's a really big kind of national effort now in this final push. So you saw the Prime Minister go to Paris this week. He was accompanied by heads of Korea's larger conglomerates like Hyundai, SK, Samsung, to kind of really push hard just to get Korea over that the finishing line. The Busan mayor was also there as well, and they've been stressing why people should choose Korea, why Busan. They've been talking about climate change and energy transition, which are very pertinent subjects. So, to try and, I guess, just pushed the relevance of having this Expo and why the world needs these kind of events. On the other side of the world in New York, you also have an effort by the Hyundai Group to hold an exhibition of a road tour of 20 cars that are designed in very distinctive art by a famous Korean artist. And so that adds a bit of sparkle to the campaign. So, you know, I guess that would really kind of capture the attention of people who don't necessarily know what the World Expo is about, because it's been a huge goal in Korea. It's been a big priority, but I think really still the wider public, you know, across the world aren't quite sure what the Expo is, you know, regardless of when it comes around. And so that will, I guess, draw the attention of those kind of people.
And which is perhaps why there are pundits who claim that geopolitics, Michelle, will actually dictate the vote for the 2030 World Expo. What do you suppose they mean?
Right. I mean, I guess, you know, when it comes to these major global events, geopolitics does play a role. You know, if they hold it in Rome, is that a statement about the migrant crisis in Italy? If they hold it in Riyadh, is it about, you know, diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia? What does it mean if it's in Busan? But I think at the end of the day, we have to look at the long-term effects and the short-term effects of hosting a major global event like that. You know, Tokyo 2020 Olympics also had to weigh these concerns about the long-term debt, long-term financing issues that does come with hosting such an event. And I think Busan, that has also been a concern, as well as the exposure that it could bring hosting the World Expo. I think sort of the conventional thought around Expo and the support for the Expo and trying to get it is that it puts a city on a global map. It puts Korea on a global map, and that it brings attention. But, you know, I would counter that Busan is already an international city. It hosts the International Film Festival. People know Busan, people know Korea, and I think they know that Busan and Korea have been ready for a long time. So I think that even if Busan doesn't get it next month, you know, there will still be a lot of attention on Korea. And if it's not the World Expo, maybe something else, but, you know, we'll see next month.
Right, we'll see. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that. Well, the president here is hoping to hold an Expo of solidarity, it said earlier. All right, Michelle, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. And Nicola, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Issues and Insiders. We return same time tomorrow. Join us then.